Hello out there, Weird Wide Webians. I think that's what we decided I was going to call you guys. Welcome to another episode of the Weird Wide Web podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey B. Goddard, and today we're doing something a little different because I promised when I started this podcast that it wouldn't become all about reading and writing and horror fiction, and I kind of lied because those are the people I know and that's what I do. So it has kind of gone that direction. And so what I'm trying to do is U-turn it a little bit and take it back to sort of a human interest level and talk about real life, or at least some strange version of real life maybe. And I'm not even really sure what I'm in store for, but I took it to social media and I said, does anyone just have some weird real life stuff they want to come on and chat about? And I am here right now with Kayleigh Dobbs because she answered my weird call. And how are you doing today, Kayleigh?
Hello, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm good. And I'm excited to talk to you because I don't get to talk about this ever really. So,
That's
but I
what
have
I'm
lots of
here
stories.
for. And you're across the pond, so that makes it more exciting for me. I feel more international that way.
Yes, I'm in Wales in the rainy UK, so quite far from you.
And I'm glad we're on together because technology's been giving us a little trouble this morning, but you know what? We're not going to let that stop our weird conversation. We are pressing forward, and
Yes,
hopefully my laptop behaves because I'm the host and I
yeah,
can't be getting kicked out of here and leaving you to tell your weird story by yourself.
just rambling on into the void alone, as usual for me, really. But you know,
So, um, I guess let's start at square one. Where was this weird place that you worked?
Okay, so I have worked in a non-dancing capacity in a strip club, which I no longer work in. But I was there for a few years, and everything about that job is weird, like every element of it. And sorry, excuse me. And I used to delight my family over Sunday lunch, telling them my work stories. And since I've left there, I don't have, I don't. My day to day life is fairly regular now, so I miss it for that reason.
It kept things exciting, huh?
Oh yeah,
I'm
it
sure
was
that
yeah, strange place.
everybody was just always probably trying to prod you for a good story because most of us are hard up for a good story. Life is so dull day to day on the average.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of end up there? And
Oh, so I believe this is years ago now, but I left 3 years ago. I want to say it could be two, but time is funny. I'm not sure. I've slept a lot
oh,
since
I
then,
feel
but
that.
I had finished a job with a seasonal contract, and I didn't think I'd have any issue finding another job because I never have. I've always pretty much any job I've applied for, I normally at least get an interview. And then I suddenly found myself in a position where, for some reason, I was really struggling to find anything. And then a mutual friend that also waitressed there just let me know there was a job available. So I went for what I thought would be an interview because I've waitressed before, and I've worked bars, a lot of bar jobs. So I wasn't, too worried about my ability to do it, a bar
Right.
job there. But when I turned up for the interview, it was not. I knew it was going to be weird from the offset because the interview was
There were signs.
there were signs. So I walked in and there was a manager and two assistant managers. Hang on, I'm trying to think of nicknames for them. We'll call them Bill and Bob because I can't use any
Okay.
real names for this. So So Bill was like the most senior assistant manager, and then Bob was the other one. And I was having a nice conversation with Bob, and he was like, "This isn't really an interview. This is just, have you worked a bar before, basically, and are you aware that this is a strip club? And if you have any moral objections, this isn't the place for you to work." And I said, "No, I just need a job, a bar job, whatever. I don't judge. This is fine." And then Bill came in. I went, "Oh, hello," it looked me up and down, made a weird pervy noise, and then Bob rushed to say, wait, no, waitress, not dancer." And he went, "Oh, sorry, babes. Are you sure you don't want to be a dancer?" And I was like, "Yes, thank you. I'll stay in the bar." And yeah, that began my foray into this industry. So,
It's so, see, I'm already veering off onto my own path, but we'll get back to yours. But it's so similar to a job interview I had, in the aspect that you never know what to expect, because the place I went, the ad made it seem like it was one of those fun sex shops, where you might go with your husband and buy the fun stuff. But when I got there, there was a couple curtained back rooms. There was some very not fun stuff happening on several screens of the TV. And of course,
no.
I went through with filling out the application and stuff, but the guy behind the counter knew I wasn't the one for the job, and I knew I wasn't the one for the job, because I think there's a line with the fun adult stores. With the fun adult stores, there's a line between fun and serious, and that was a very serious place. I booked it out of there, and they never called me, and I'm glad.
Yeah, that sounds like it might have been more than just, a place that sold items and
Yeah. I'm not sure
yeah.
what was going on behind the curtains, and I'm glad I don't know. And so that memory just came up. I totally forgot about that. See? Now you're reminding me of all my weird stuff. Because we all need
have
money.
weird stuff. Yeah. It was so funny. So I was quite shy, really, really shy, actually. And so they were like, "Okay, do you want to do a trial shift tonight?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, yes." I wasn't expecting a trial shift on the spot, but I thought, yeah, that's fine. I can stay and do a trial. Because I really needed the job. I'd been out of work for months, and I was starting to panic. So I thought, oh, this is fine. And he just sort of walked me around the club, just gave me a tour of the place basically while it was still closed. But there were some of the girls there getting ready, and I don't have to keep this like PG or anything, right? I know
Nope.
This is the topic, but okay. So so he takes you to the changing rooms, and they're like downstairs, sort of like basement level in this club, which already sounds weird, but that's the way it was structured. And I walked in, and the first thing I saw was a girl just in a thong, sat up on one of the tables, like the dressing mirror kind of things, eating a sandwich casually with her boobs out. And I thought, okay. So I didn't know where to look. I was like, "Oh, hello." And he was like, "Oh, this is the new waitress. This is so-so." And I was like, okay. And then we walk through, there were like 3 changing rooms interlinked. So we walk into the second one, and there is a girl who's completely naked in there. And she was like, "Oh, thank God. Can you just check to see that I haven't got any dried fake tan that makes my butt look weird?" And then she just bent over. And I was like, "You want me to look?" Like, she's like,
And
"Yeah,
you
yeah."
had never
like
met prior.
No. And I was like, my face, I could feel like my face getting really hot and everything. And I was like, oh my God. So I was like, "Yeah, your butthole looks fine. Everything's fine. This seems fine." But it's a quick introduction, I guess, because the girls are just so used to each other, like getting changed. It's the ladies'
Right.
changing rooms. So, they're not embarrassed about this kind of stuff. But I was dying. Yeah. So then I was just paid with a waitress to just show me how to do everything. And the rest of the night was a bit more normal from that point, but like normal in a strip club sense.
Maybe that's why they just went ahead and got you started, because if they had given you the walk around and then given you a chance to go home, you might not have come back.
Yeah, maybe. And I was really intimidated because I have female friends, but I did get bullied quite horribly by a group of girls when I was in school, and I think I never lost the fear of like bigger groups of women for some reason.
Oh, they're
And so this
terrifying. Yes.
and this environment, almost everyone that works there is a woman. Almost all of them are dancers, so they like you off on the offset you assume that they're all just like one big group, but that's not really what it's like. But I was, yeah, and they're all, gorgeous, beautiful, confident woman as it looks to you when you see it for the first time. So I was just like, oh, I want to crawl into a shell.
Well, and then they're like, incorporate her in here as quickly as possible so that we can. Um, I mean, it's either going to be that you stay or you leave. So it's kind of like, yeah, you might as well just get started tonight and see where this is going from here. I mean, obviously you
Yeah,
stayed.
yeah, and yeah, I started as a waitress, and then I quite quickly got moved over to what they refer to as a chip girl. So, if customers want to pay on card for dances, then I would take the card payments.
Oh,
And then I got moved. So, and you'd be surprised. Oh, that's a whole thing. Drunk people trying to pay for stuff on card. But um, then they moved me from, there was like a chip desk where people would pay for the cheaper dances, and then they moved me into, there was like a VIP, I say lounge in inverted commas because this this place was a crap hole. But it was a lounge. And so um that was for the pricier um things. So the VIP lounge is a bit different. So like the girls do dance in there, but it's more like the customers are paying for blocks of time. And so the longer the girls can keep them in there, obviously the more money they make.
right.
Because they pay per 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour, 2 hours, whatever, and it's really expensive. And half the time the girls don't even dance at all. They'll just keep the guys talking. And and then they're like, oh, the half an hour's up. But that's normally the customers they're just looking for someone to talk to. If that,
Right.
like, which sounds weird, but that is where most of like the bigger money was.
Right. No, I mean, companionship. I mean, yeah, that's what drives a lot of that business, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I'd have I'd have guys, usually the younger guys, crying to me sometimes, literally crying, or to me or to the door staff, like, I thought she liked me, and then I ran out of money and she just walked away.
Oh, no.
And you're like, well, I mean, it's quite open that it's a transactional, kind of thing, but yeah, it was,
No,
yeah,
who is the sex industry more? I think it's hardest on the men that are desperately seeking companionship that they're under the impression they can pay for. Um,
yeah, it's it's um it's wild. So I don't know. I've never been to America. I don't know what the setup for the clubs there is, but the UK has really strict laws about what's allowed. So I've only seen American strip clubs in movies. So I don't know how true that is to actual life anyway, but I'm sure it's exaggerated. But in
um,
the UK, there. Sorry, go on.
it's probably not too terribly exaggerated.
Okay.
Things are pretty seedy here.
I got the idea that there was a big difference on the few occasions where we would have American customers that were vacationing or something, and they'd come in and be like, "This is boring."
hmm And that's
um,
what I was wondering. I even said to Casey Hill, who was thinking about joining me because sometimes she co-hosts, I said, I wonder if it's just terribly polite over there, like just so much more
well,
polite and maybe safer. I even want to say for the women who work there because I don't know, things do get crazy over here. They do.
well, I don't know. I don't know if I'd use the word polite, but the I will
Regulated.
say yes. So there are very strict rules. So there's obviously full nudity if people are paying for a naked dance, but the girls are not allowed to make any physical contact with the customer at all.
Oh, wow.
So no actual lap dancing, for example, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And There are very specific rules. This made me laugh when I learned about this, because when I was moved into VIP, they ran me down on all these rules because I was supposed to snitch on the girls if I saw anything, and then call security if something happened, which it didn't very often. But there's a rule. So like once one of the dancers has like removed her underwear, she's not allowed to bend over, like stuff like that. They're
Right.
not allowed. So the customer's supposed to just be seeing like a naked lady, but nothing super graphic.
Right.
If
Probably
that makes
like
sense.
original Playboy, maybe.
Yeah, that's how it's supposed to run, and I'm sure there are clubs that bend these rules, but we do often have. I don't know. I'm sure
They
you must have
bend
this in
the
America.
no bending rule.
Yeah, and we'd get these. They call them they call them mystery shoppers here. I'm sure you have some version of this. So I would normally know if it was someone coming in to check that the rules were being followed, because they'd ask really specific questions when I'd serve them that a customer would never ask. Because they're checking everything, so making sure I'm doing my job correctly as well. So
like,
I would
couldn't any more obviously be a spy.
Yeah, but and some of the girls would know, but most of the girls actually appreciated the rules, because then when a customer was like, "Oh, if I give you extra money, will you do this, this, and this?" and then the girls can say, "Absolutely not, because I'll get fired," and it helped them when they were dealing with customers who were trying to pay them for things that weren't available, shall we say. Because I would say the majority of the girls that I knew were not interested in doing anything more than what they were doing. Like
Right.
that was
they're making
yeah,
plenty of money doing that, so why bother? Right.
exactly. And most of the time they'd get quite offended as well if the guys asked them to do anything, or like, "Oh, what time do you finish? Do you want to? What if I give you more money to come to my hotel?" And they'd be like, "No, thank you, sir."
Did anyone ever have to get kicked out?
Oh yeah, customers, yes. That was like a nightly occurrence.
Every night.
Every night, and it would be for varying degrees of whatever they'd done. So usually a customer, it could range from just a customer is just simply too drunk, and they just need to be taken out of the building now because they're passing out in a chair. Or it could be that a customer had just like not taken no for an answer on the no touching rule, and they were just trying to get away with it anyway. So then we'd call security that would take them out. And that was the darker side of working there, because the police do not care about exotic dancers. Like, they really don't. We did have a few instances that were a bit more serious, where it would stray into like one of the girls would actually get assaulted, because they're in booths and there are cameras everywhere and security walking around. But obviously these types of guys would wait to make sure there was no one looking. And then, we'd get to them, but it would be like after the fact sometimes.
Yeah.
That's
the thing about predators. They lie in wait and they observe everything and they wait for the right moment.
Yeah, and then sometimes we would, like, security would detain them and we'd call the police, and the police would come and they just wouldn't. It would be like, well, what do you expect working in a place like this? Or they'd outright blame, like, oh, well, did you tell the guy that he could do something and now you're just trying to whatever. So that was like the hard, because I did see some. I'll tell you about them if you want to know, but I don't know if that's a bit too much. But yeah, I did see a few like worse incidents. Where it would make me, I still to this day feel very, very loyal to the dancers, because I saw what kind of stuff they'd have to put up with. And
you're going to carry that with you for the rest of your life, with witnessing that the authority figures weren't really properly doing their job.
And this is why I loved the door staff so much, because the customers really didn't like them. But when I started working there, it was the best door staff team. As far as like my personal safety and all of the staff and dancers went, they were amazing, and they very much cared if something happened.
Okay, we keep getting a little bit of technical difficulty, which I don't know if it's my end or Kayleigh's end, because we're both cursed with technology, but we're still having fun talking about this crazy strip club, and I'm going to keep on going, even if I keep getting error messages. Because I believe in this episode, and I believe people need to hear what you have to say.
I'll tell you what I think it is. it's somehow the management from this place know, and they're trying to stop.
It's Bob and Bill.
Yes, well, Bill maybe not so much Bob. Bob is great.
Bob's a good guy.
Bob's the great one, but yeah.
Every place does have to have a Bob and a Bill. I swear, it's like good cop and bad cop.
Yeah, I mean, Bill, to be honest, he was also fine. I did like him. It was the senior management that were the evil people, which is why I will not be naming the place I worked. Because for all you all know, I've worked several places, and this could be any of them. So, allegedly.
Every successful company has evil overlords. That's how they became successful. I think.
Oh, yeah.
When I sat down and counted at one point how many jobs I've held in life, it's over 30.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you that over 20 of them were pretty weird. There's not a whole lot of normal things you can do in my skill bracket, apparently.
Yeah, I've had some. I've worked. Most of the jobs I've had have been normal, but then some of the places were weird. But the place I worked the last place I worked before I worked in the strip club was a family holiday park. That was equally as weird, but for completely different reasons.
And that's the natural progression: family holiday park to
yeah. Yes, that's how one climbs that sort of ladder in hospitality. That's
well, what in the world could be so weird at a family holiday park?
Mascot work.
Oh,
being the mascots and the we should just save that for a whole other podcast, Lindsay. That's a whole thing unto itself. The holiday park. But
it's funny that you said that, because right before this episode, I asked on Facebook what people's weirdest jobs were that they had, and the status has only been up for like an hour, but I'll end up slaughtering her name, NJ Gallegos. I actually met her at a convention I went to, and I have a book of hers I need to read. I just remembered, but she said, well, there's two different parts to what she said, and part of it applies to your mascot thing. It said her weird jobs were either my high school job of potato rouging, where you walk up and down fields and dig up bad potato plants, or in college when I worked at an ice cream shop and I had to wear a costume of a cow in a dress for parties. So she was a cow in a dress.
Yes, it gets weird when you're being those characters in those suits. The park I worked at had a few of them, and it's not so much the actual, like, that's really fun being in a mascot suit, and like the kids love it, and it's very wholesome, and it's really rewarding. Because you're just making children happy all day. But it's the language that everyone else around the park uses about the mascot. So nobody is allowed, by contract, we were not allowed to ever admit that they weren't real to anyone. So you're not allowed to discuss it with other staff members. You're definitely not allowed to acknowledge it to a guest that is like, oh, who's the crocodile today? And you have to say, I don't know what you mean.
Wow.
That's a real crocodile, like to grown adults.
I just went into a whole horror story where somebody slips and says something and they take him out back and you hear the pop. I don't know.
Well, yeah, people like disciplinary action could be taken for these kinds of slips. So you just get used to saying things like, if you're going to go get one of the mascot suits, you, instead of, even when you're backstage to the other people who are the mascots, you say stuff like, oh, I'm just going to go and get my friend, instead of, oh, I'm going to get the suit.
Right, because they want the full-on immersion in the fantastic whole thing they got going on. Okay, I get
and
it.
you have to get used to using that language so that you don't slip up in front of other people. So we'd only realize how weird we sounded if someone new came backstage and they'd just be listening to us talk and looking at us like we were all crazy.
A cult. They're looking at you like you're a weird cult.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to get in one of the big ones where they have to have an electric fan in there to cool you down and stuff?
They were supposed to be a fan in one of them, but it didn't work.
So it's just a swamp of human sweat in there, probably.
It's disgusting, Lindsay. Honestly, like you get into these suits. They were only cleaned once a year because they got to be cleaned a special way, so they'd send them off when the park was closed, and someone would be in them at least once a day, every suit, so every time you get into one, they're probably still drying from someone else's sweat. It's a very unique smell, and after a while you get used to it, but it's gross. It's so gross.
Luckily, somehow I've never had a job that involved dressing up in a suit, so I guess I'll just count myself lucky there, according to what I just heard.
Yeah, there are perks and perils, but that was a weird time also.
I have had some weird ones. I had to clean a snack factory one time, and it involved a lot of crawling into large machines filled with grease and puddles of. Well, one time I was power washing an entire room, and it was just sort of raining chocolate on me, like chocolate rain. I'm not exaggerating.
Wow.
A
That
lot of,
sounds nice, but it must have been horrible.
yeah, there was a lot of just wearing food on my skin at that job.
Oh, oh no.
I swear. And then what's some another weird one I had? Well, I mean, I'll admit now that I'm older, I was probably way underqualified, but it was probably back in 2010 I started offering editing services on like indie books, but for really, really affordable prices because I don't have the papers from a college. I'm just good at what I do. But I still to this day think about this one manuscript I got, and I almost feel like I was being trolled. Like, I feel like somebody who didn't like me was playing a trick on me, and that doesn't make sense because they purchased and paid for my editing services. But what happened is I ended up refunding the money because I honestly couldn't make like heads or tails of what plot or characters were even doing what. I mean, it was just the most bizarre document I've ever opened up and read. I don't know if they thought an editor just like takes your random thoughts you write when you wake up with an idea at 3 a.m. Like, the notebook where you just like jot all the crazy crap. That's what I feel like I got, but in MS Word form. And so I still think back on that because that literally scared me away from it. I was like, this is.
Wow. I do a little bit of freelance editing, and you're normally just proofreading and then pointing out plot holes or making some suggestions. But that sounds
I really wanted to help the guy, but it's like after a character was introduced, I don't know if I ever saw there was constant introduction of new characters, no foreseeable plot, and also just riddled with actual errors. And I think I cried a little bit and then sent their money back.
Oh my gosh.
So that was
yeah.
a weird one for sure.
I think crying at work is a universal experience, unfortunately. I think most of us have cried for some reason. I did cry at the strip club a couple times because of the length of some of my shifts.
Oh no.
So football and rugby are very big here. Football is in soccer for
right
American people. Soccer is like the main. It's practically a national sport. If it isn't a national sport, I really don't follow it, so I don't know. But those days, I'm sure you know that the UK has a reputation for binge drinking.
I suppose.
You like on a Saturday night there are parked ambulances in Cardiff, in the major city in
I
Wales.
should laugh at that. That's awful.
No, it's
awful,
like
but funny.
It's ridiculous. Like people are so drunk that they anticipate it and they just park. There'll be like one or two parked ambulances just waiting to look after people who are too drunk. And the football days are the worst. And anyone that works in a bar in the UK will sympathize because they'll also dread it. But you tend to end up working an abnormally long shift that they somehow get away with making you work, even though it does breach the law. It's just an entire day of people who are incredibly drunk and also as someone on the other side of the bar, I have to say that the football people are the worst customers in the world, because if their team won, then they're smug and obnoxious, and if their team lost, then they're angry and probably going to fight. So
They woke up
it's
planning to feel strong emotions that day, one way or the other. They're like, by the
yes,
end of this day, I'm going to be really emotional.
yeah, and this is what taught me that despite the reputation that women have for being over emotional in society, I've learned that men are very over emotional when it comes to football. Um, Emotional creatures they are, and the shift
Well, in
we
America, we will riot over it. So maybe you guys probably aren't doing that bad. You don't get
oh
riots, do you?
yeah,
Oh, my
yeah, yeah,
goodness.
yeah.
So they're just
It's
rioting everywhere over just throwing these little balls around. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. It's bizarre. But we so the shift time wise on a Friday night we would start at 6 p.m. and then we would finish at 6 a.m. Or the club would close at 6 a.m. and we stopped getting paid at 6 a.m. regardless of how much longer we were there cleaning up and stuff.
Of course.
And then so we'd work the Friday night, and then the football shift was always on a Saturday. So we all finished at 6 a.m. and then had to be back in work for 6 hours later
Ugh.
for a shift that wouldn't end until 6 a.m. So it would be an 18-hour shift 6 hours after a 12-hour shift.
Which is technically legal just because they gave you maybe enough time to eat and sleep in between. Oh boy.
It's actually illegal that time. I'm sure here. I think it's got to be 8 hours. I don't know, but anyway, they got away with it.
Well, well, I don't want them coming after me, so we'll just say it was probably all right.
Yeah, and yeah, so you're already tired when you get there, and then there'll be a big gap of time where there's no one in the club because the game is on and they couldn't stream it there. So you just have like a little nice 2 hours, and then once it finished, the club would be at capacity, like busier than ever. With people really wanting to throw their money around. They were crazy days. But yeah, I cried because of being tired on those shifts. Because I just once I moved from waitressing to being the chip girl, I just didn't take breaks. I was allowed, but it would mean that someone would have to cover my station, and because there was paperwork involved in what I was doing, it would be such a complicated mess for me to come back to, that I just didn't bother. I just didn't bother going because it wasn't worth it.
And then everyone probably said, "Oh, that sounds like such a fun job. Oh, that sounds so crazy and fun." And then you're just exhausted and overworked like every other job. And you're crying in your car and you're crying in the bathroom like we're all out there doing. Oh boy.
The girls were great because they could just take a break whenever they wanted, really, and so a lot of them would come and like, oh, do you need a cup of tea or do you need a snack? I can go get you something. They kept me alive. But the customers are in. This is another thing about grown men after they've had a bunch of alcohol, and this isn't all men, but this is the typical kind of customer I had. So if they spent over a certain amount of money, I'd have to make them sign a receipt that was just them confirming that they were like consenting to spending their own money, and that they weren't incapacitated it. Like, so if they were too drunk, I couldn't serve them if they wanted to spend over £100 or something. And I had a chest camera that I'd have to put on to do these transactions as well, just to cover myself, because a lot of people get remorseful a couple of days after they've realized that they've spent £1,000, and then they try to say, oh well, the dancer stole it from me, and so we actually have to be able to prove that.
Or when they have to explain it to a little somebody at home, maybe.
Oh
too.
my god, the number of men when they're signing these receipts that go, will my wife know? I'm like, well, not from me. This is just a receipt. It's not going to get uploaded somewhere. It's just for our records. But if you know that your wife wouldn't be okay with this, then maybe you shouldn't be here. It's not for me to judge. But it was just getting them to sign the receipt, because I'd have to ask them for ID and then tell them, can you just pop your signature here? And if it didn't match the signature on their card, I couldn't accept it, because then they could be anyone. They could have stolen the idea. This is like far reaching a bit, but this was just like legal coverage. Or they could make the claim, well, that clearly I was too drunk. if my signature doesn't even match. So that's what they would. So I'd have to say, I'd tell them, look, if it doesn't match your card, I can't take it. And the number of men that would just do a squiggle because they couldn't be bothered, and I'd have to write out the entire receipt again. And sometimes they get childish and just start drawing dicks. That happened more than you'd think.
Oh, I'm sure.
Well, I'm like,
it's one of the most beloved things to doodle.
Yeah, I'm like, sir, you're 45 years old, and I've got a queue of 30 people behind you. Can you just sign the receipt? And then they get, stroppy about it and start acting a little bit like tantrumy toddlers. And it's like, this could all be over if you just signed it. It honestly, that was most of what I had to call security over, because men just suddenly decided they couldn't write their own name.
I'm sorry, but that you saying men acting like tantrumy toddlers, I'm gonna share a message I got today when I did get on Facebook and I was asking for people's weirdest jobs. And
Go on.
She said relay with anonymity. Okay, because I'm not going to say who this was, but the message says, I was paid to tell a man to spank himself with plastic spoons and to call him a disappointment. That's it. That's the message I got. Because I asked for your weirdest job, and that was her weirdest job. And you know what? I don't think she needs to say much more. She was paid, and she didn't do the spanking. It says, I was paid to tell a man to spank himself with plastic spoons. And she was calling him a disappointment while he was doing that.
So that sounds like such easy money.
It is. That's a good work day. Honestly, and he had fun probably. So, it worked out for everybody. And I love that I can pop on Facebook and within an hour, everyone has just had weird experiences, and we're not demonizing anyone here. I think I kind of take joy in us all sharing our weird experiences so that we're not afraid to, and we know that kind of we're all a little bit weird, aren't we?
Well, I did get introduced to the wide world of like various fetishes while I worked there. So this is one of the rules that the girls are absolutely not allowed to engage in any fetish kind of stuff. They're there to dance and that's it. But sometimes, allegedly, sometimes the management would look the other way depending on where it was. So if it was something that didn't involve any actual like sexual activity, if that makes sense. So there were a lot of guys that just liked feet, so they just wanted the girls to take their shoes off.
That's a big community, big foot community out there.
Yeah, and so the guys weren't allowed to touch the girls' feet, but they just paid them to like take their shoes off and sit and talk to them, and then just have their feet out. So the management weren't super weird about that, because sometimes the girls just took their shoes off anyway if they had been on them all night. But I saw, and I'm not judging anyone for any of these things, by the way. This is just things I didn't know existed, or so stuff I experienced sort of like secondhand, because I'd be walking through the VIP lounge and I'd see it. There was one guy that really had a thing for really tall women, and so he'd come in and he'd ask, which girl is wearing the highest shoes? Who's the tallest girl here? So I'd try and find whoever that was. And then he'd probably spend an hour or 2 hours in VIP, and he'd never wanted dances. He just wanted the girl to tower over him and then just talk about that she was getting taller. So
like the whole Alice in Wonderland getting taller.
Kind of, yeah. So he'd sit and she'd stand over him, or she'd stand over him if the shoes she was wearing did put her taller than him. And he would just be like, "Oh, how tall are you now?" And she'd say, "Oh, I'm 7 feet tall now." And you'd go, "Wow." And then 2 minutes later, you'd be like, "How tall are you now?" She's like, "Oh, I'm nearly 8 feet." And that was his thing. And I just didn't know, like that.
Helping people realize their fantasies.
Yeah. And I just thought, I'm naive because I just didn't know. Like, that's very specific. I don't think that's like
that is so specific.
Well, I have it here. But my favorite ones were guys who liked to be financially abused, and they're
already at a good start being at the club.
Yeah, so and I learned to be able to recognize them over time, by the way they talked and stuff. So there was those guys normally had like a regular dancer that they'd pay to sit with in VIP, because the dancer would know already, and they would just want the dancer to be like, right, get your wallet out, give me this much money, and then they would just hand it over. And
What?
yeah, and so that turned out to be great for me a lot of the time, because I'd walk through and be like, hi, do you guys want to pay for more time, or do you need a waitress, what do you need, da 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 da, and then the dancer would be like, well, tip her. And the guy would be like, oh well, I wasn't going to tip her, I was just going to give you money. And then the dancer, if they were like, if they liked me, would be like, well, give her £100 or something. And they would just demand, and then the guy would just hand it over.
Well,
um,
that's what he wants.
it was amazing. Honestly, they were like it was a weird place to work, and working nights all the time and those kinds of hours and stuff was bad. But some like that was the perk of it, when you'd get people like that. And I
And it's
served
really
the
like it's an insight into human psychology because I mean,
yeah,
we
yeah,
picture, and especially we tend to do this to the male gender, and it's really not fair. We really simplify them as, just kind of being operated by their groin sometimes. But there's a whole lot of things that appeal to people in a whole lot of different ways. And as you're kind of describing, it's kind of manifesting at the strip club, like,
yeah.
pretending to get taller. I'm still on that one. Like, I think I'd be one of the girls purposely wearing flats because I don't know if I'd want to have to play act getting taller for this guy. I'd be acting shorter
Yeah,
when he came in. Like, I don't want to get hit. But
yeah, it was. Yeah, people are very complex, and we had like a lot of regular customers, so that I would get used to seeing. And I'll be honest, like I really sincerely really liked a lot of them, because the people who come in on stag parties, or I think you call them bachelor parties or something.
Mhm.
I really didn't like those crowds, because those were always like the pack mentality. They've already had too many drinks and they're going to be really insulting and offensive to everyone kind of guys. But the regular customers were usually the people that were quite low key, and most of them never even bought dances. They were just coming in for
Yeah.
conversation,
Our
really.
comfort zone.
Yeah, and then sometimes we'd get like younger guys that would come in, and maybe they weren't very confident with women at all in their real lives, so they'd just have a favorite dancer and they'd come in like every other week.
And
And
I sometimes
again,
think that
yeah.
certain men, I feel, they feel more comfortable and accepted surrounded by women because all that men do is razz each other and,
Hmm.
insult each other and jab at each other. And I've known men that I know for a fact just feel more comfortable in a setting with all women. So, I mean, the sex part aside, that could be a lot of the draw of a strip club for some men.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, it's so weird to say, but it's kind of like the least of it, the dancing side. Where from where I was sitting when I like observing the customers, there was a regular that came in for years. He was still going in there all the time when I left, and everyone knew him, like because he'd been just coming to these clubs for maybe like 20 years or something, like 3 or 4 times a week. He never bought dances. He would just sit at the bar. On occasion, he might pay a girl to talk to him, but he wasn't even really interested in that. And I sometimes the girls would just get nosy and ask him, why are you always here? Like, why? And every now and then, one of the dancers would realize that maybe he wasn't an easy target, because he was quite wise to it, but every now and then one of the girls would find a way to sort of take advantage, like make him believe that they were really interested in him outside of the club and things like
Yeah,
that.
I think that's a pretty common thing too.
Yeah, and then he'd come in all heartbroken when he realized that that wasn't the case, and it was kind of his like pattern. And we used to say, why are you coming here and spending so much money, and you know that you're not going to get a sincere relationship. You're not going to find your future wife here, because everyone here is at work. It's a job. And he just said, look, he was like, I'm not going to go into my thing about women, but at least it's honest here. He was like, it's transactional. I know when I come in that if I want to talk to anyone, I'm paying them. And the girls know that, they're just charging me and it's just for work.
What I'm hearing
So
is there's less chance of rejection because Rejection's
Hmm.
tough, man. Rejection rips us apart, you know? Some people get
Yeah,
tired of it and they don't want to do it anymore.
yeah. I did feel I felt a little bit sorry for him sometimes, but then also then he'd the more you talk to him, the more you realized why he was single. So um that was
It
another thing.
all adds up the more you conversate with the man.
Oh yeah. We had this little old guy that used to come in. He was so sweet. He was about 85, and everyone was super nice to him. And he had like two favorite girls that he'd always pay for in VIP and stuff. And on his birthday, we like this is how well we knew this guy. We got him a cake on his birthday and decorated a booth with banners and everything, balloons, and he was widowed, so everyone just felt like they wanted to like look after him, and he was really sweet and nice and polite, and he'd tip everyone, and he was just really nice. And about a year and a half into working there, he came in one night, and then about an hour later, an angry woman comes in, and it's his wife.
Oh no.
He told us that she was dead. The girls used to, give him money off because he was widowed, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's a lonely old man. He lost the love of his life." So people, like, he'd get free drinks and everything. We'd try and take care of him, and then
That
she came in all
sweet old
angry.
man is not a sweet old man. Oh
Yeah,
no.
I was like, wow. I like that taught me a lesson because he was there in his little cardigan, and like, I just thought, oh my god, he's been taking us all for a ride. And then he was desperately walking her around, trying to get everyone to confirm that he never actually bought dances. And but she'd like, found their bank statements or something, and suddenly after years realized this how much money has he been spending, because it was thousands.
Oh yeah.
um
And
I
I always tell people, um, that's the whole issue with me and my husband. It's kind of an ongoing joke with us because he got with me when he was 19 years old, and so he's never been to a strip club. And
Mhm.
it's not about the naked ladies for me. It's about giving them our money.
Uh-huh.
Okay? That's the
Yeah.
issue. Okay? And so this woman, she was probably sitting there thinking, "How much of my damn money have you
Yeah.
given these
Yeah.
ladies?"
Well, that was like always the unbelievable part to me, because the so I wouldn't care if my husband, like, if he went on a stag night with a friend who was getting married or something, they went to a strip club, I really wouldn't care. But if he spent £1,000 in a strip club, I'd be furious.
Right.
And I'd always think that, because oh god, I'd see guys they'd spend whatever money they had in their usual account, and I'd watch them transferring money out of their savings into their current account. And when you think about what it's for as well, like, they're not getting anything.
Yeah.
So it's insane, and the amounts
Almost
that
like a
people would
gambling
spend.
addiction because well, even worse because gambling might eventually pay off, you know?
Yeah, it was oh god, and the way that, so I tried not to ever tell people that I worked there, because the second you say you work in a strip club, it doesn't matter what follows that, they assume that you're a dancer. And I got nothing against it, but then other people get judgmental towards you. And it was, so I told my neighbor, because my neighbors noticed what time I left and got home from work, I told them that I worked in a casino. um just
Easier.
to say, yeah, it's just easier. But yeah, those girls are amazing, women. And sometimes I'd hear men who didn't know, like friends of mine that didn't know I worked there, claiming that they went to the very club I worked in sometimes, claiming that they took one of the girls home. And it would just make me laugh so much, because I like, the
Ugh.
least likely place that a man in the UK is going to pick up a woman is in a strip club. Like, I can promise you. And like, for
Because the
any
whole
women
club
that
will get shut down, and they're not gonna cater to you that way, buddy.
also, by and large, dancers are really not a massive fan of men as a whole. Like, if like, because of what they're subjected to every night in work.
Right.
So
They've
it's
seen the
just,
worst side of it.
Yeah, and because most of their customers are people with girlfriends, people with wives, and they openly to the dancer being sneaky about the fact, oh, my girlfriend would break up with me if she knew I was here, and trying to pay the girls to leave with them. So like it does, when that's your sort of sample pool of men that you interact with the most, it makes you lose faith that they're trustworthy, which it's not fair for all men. But that when you do that night after night, that's kind of what happens.
It's so silly that these rumors continue into adulthood because that's stuff from high school. Oh yeah, my buddy
Mhm.
slept with her. No, he didn't.
Oh, it's so stupid. And anytime I've every now and then you'd get a couple that would come in, and the girl in the couple was always a bit like less sure about if they were okay with it, and I would always tell them, look, you do not need to worry that any of these women are sincerely interested in your boyfriend. I promise you, they're not. They don't care. Like, you're not going to lose your boyfriend to a stripper. Like, it's just not going to happen.
And they're thinking,
I
yeah, but I don't want to lose that money. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just going
Yeah,
back to
yeah.
that
Well,
because
no, but that is like, because that's what they're there for. Like I'm sure it's probably the same in the US, but the girls are self-employed technically, so they pay the club a fee to work there, so they don't get like an hourly rate or anything. So if they don't make money, then they've lost money. So that is always the main priority: is the guy going to pay me, or are they going to waste my time? So that is always the first assessment with the customer.
I was just excited to find out that there's even strip clubs in the UK because, we put you guys in a box like I used the word polite. You probably hear that too much. Like you're like, we're not polite. It's not, but that's how you picture it because Americans tend to be a little cruder, I think. And so it was just interesting to me to even picture all the goings on that you may have encountered and hearing
It's
these
crazy.
stories. Like
There's so much. The stage, I know that the stage shows are completely different in the UK, because every now and then we'll get American girls who are vacationing, but they're working a little bit, so you get girls from out of the country sometimes just coming in for like a random shift or two shifts. And the stage show difference, like the girls have to go on stage. It is in their contract, but people don't tip in the UK. So um the
hmm.
girls, if somebody gets tipped on stage, it's like a once in a blue moon kind of event. But they do not make money from stage shows, so they just have to do it for just so that customers have got continuous entertainment, whether they're paying for dancers or not. um so a lot of the time you'd get just groups of
So
customers
the
that
whole thing over here where we say make it rain because we're throwing all the dollar bills out, that's not a
yeah,
thing there? You can't make it
nope,
rain? Oh,
no.
real rain in the UK, but no money rain.
Exactly. We don't have uh so we have a pound instead of a dollar, but we don't have anything in notes that's less than £5, and £5 notes aren't very common. So £10 notes are what people would normally have, but men are just not going to give a dancer on stage a £10 note, let
Right.
alone multiple notes. So
And are the smaller ones coins then? Like, would you be chucking metal at
yeah,
these girls?
it would just be coins, and then the every now and then the club will try to instate something like, oh, you can pay this money and you'll get like dance vouchers, which substitutes actual cash that you can give to the girls on stage. But it just never does well, because people just don't want to, because they get it for free anyway. They just won't tip, and it's just, that's generally a British thing anyway. I think life for the dancers is so much different to what people think, because when you see them, they're all made up, they look glamorous, and they're wearing, sparkly outfits or whatever. And but then, like, after a shift, when everyone's really tired and the lights come back on and you just see everyone is exhausted, their feet are swollen because they've been in these I think like stripwear shoes are actually like better than regular high heels, because I think that it's considered that they're wearing them for hours and hours at a time, like
I
they're
think
padded and
so.
stuff. But they still high heels. So people's knees and backs are sore. and
I'm
um,
sure.
and they're like peeling their eyelashes off, just like, I need a burger. It's yeah, and then
Especially
yeah, and
after encountering so many different personality types in a shift anytime you work with the public is just exhausting. So I imagine it's just even more so at the strip club, like because you got those extreme personality types and
yeah, and it's a sales job and a customer service job when you think about it, and entertainment. So it's because I've worked in sales very briefly, where like if I didn't sell, I didn't make money, and I'm not cut out for it. Like
mm,
that kind of stress when you have bills
me
to
either.
pay and you think, yeah, I could work
Or,
12 hours.
especially if you don't believe in the product, which was my case, because I felt as though
Yeah.
it was overpriced and that people could do better with a different business. And I think that kind of came through because I
Hmm.
wasn't making any sales. Obviously, I won't say what company, but I didn't last there very long because how do you sell somebody something that you don't think they need to own? That's a tough one.
Hmm. Yeah, and the girls are basically they're selling their personalities. I know people think, oh, they're selling like that they look nice or whatever, but it's like it's personality, because if the customer doesn't like the girl, they won't pay for a dance with them normally. It like
Right.
because it the girls have told me that over the girls who've like been in the business a long time told me that it used to be a lot easier before social media was such a huge thing. They'd say, they'd just walk up to a table and be like, "Hi, anyone want to go for a dance?" And some guy would get up, and it was as simple as that. But now you have to sit there and spend 20 minutes trying to talk the guy into liking you in the first place, apparently.
You are
And
the
then,
product.
yeah, so it'd be like £20 for like a 3 minute dance. That's like a standard dance. And so usually it used to take the girls, 5 minutes to get that, but now it takes them half an hour to get that. So it's obviously, most people here don't earn £20 an hour, so that still sounds like good money. But considering what they're doing for it, I do see the frustration.
Sounds pretty mentally exhausting.
Yeah, and especially when you're dealing with men who they're rating you on your looks, and a lot of the customers do treat the girls like they don't have feet, like they're not people because of what they do for work. So I would imagine that it gets quite exhausting hour upon hour of men openly telling you what they would rate you on looks, criticizing you to your face, or sometimes the girls would just decide, I actually don't like this guy and I don't want his money, and they'd walk away, and then they get abuse hurled at them. Well, you're ugly anyway, you're fat, you're not worth any money, what are you even doing working here? And it's all just, it's a bit novel coming from a man who's paying a woman to be naked, but in the moment, like the new girls sometimes I'd feel so sorry for, because they like, that's the part I think that people don't realize, and it is quite,
And
it
it
can be
sounds
really
like you really, above all else, you saw the human side of these girls that so often, even by the police officers that got called, or cast aside. These are human beings who have to keep a roof over their head, and food in their belly, and that's what you kind of witnessed there and took away from it, is what I'm hearing. And
they just I haven't worked there for a few years, but I still have a very close group of friends that are dancers that worked there, and they are the best female friends I've ever had. They're girls. They'll defend you to the end of the earth. They're always there for me for everything, and they were always like that even before they properly got to know me. They
that's
you know they
wonderful. We all need that,
Yeah,
and most of
they
us don't
love
have it.
they're lovely. On the run up to my wedding, I got married last year. And I got engaged 2 years before that. So I was still working there then when I got engaged. And every time they brought a customer into VIP, they were like, "Oh, do you want to give her a little tip?" And they'd be like, "Why? For taking my money?" Like, "Yeah, but she's getting married. Weddings,
Oh,
go on." And I sort like those girls made me the money that paid for my photographer. Like they were
nice.
incredible, like lovely, they sweet, like sensitive girls. They I don't think anyone would mind me saying, like, just like every other woman, they've got, self-confidence issues, which you'd never believe when you see them at work, but it's true. And yeah, I'd always feel sorry for the new girls that hadn't sort of developed the thick skin yet, because then when a customer's being horrible to them, they really take it as fact, about their looks or
And that's
whatever.
any job dealing with the public at first, because your
Yeah.
skin gets thicker as you go. Oh boy. I was so nice when I first started working, and boy, that wore off. I feel like I do want to, I want to read a couple of these comments of the weird jobs, like, before we
Oh,
close out,
yeah.
because some of them were weird. Um, well, this one's not weird. This one sounds really relaxing, actually. Ivan Zorik, who's this author friend of mine who's been on there for a while, he says, as kids in high school, we used to go snail collecting after the rains for a local French restaurant. So they were collecting escargot. Have you
Oh
ever
my
had
God.
escargot?
I haven't. I had pet giant African land snails once, so I
Oh,
just
I've
can't
had
bring
pet snails
myself.
too. Yes, his name was Gary, obviously.
Gary! Oh.
We're not going to eat Gary.
Yeah, I
No.
can't. I love snails. Um, they're so, I don't know, I think they're sweet little creatures. I couldn't possibly eat one.
And well, I'm into all those weird cooking shows and stuff, but I like to look at it, but I can't conceive of eating most things that move around. I'll leave it at that. But let's see
Yeah.
what we got here. And then Rebecca Cuthbert, I'm actually going to have her on toward the end of September. She said she was a flag girl at a repo auction, and she would hold the flag and move from repoed four-wheeler to repoed motorcycle, but the auctioneer went so fast that she would often miss her cue and she'd get yelled at by the throng of buyers. It was in a
Oh.
gigantic warehouse in Georgia that was full of angry buyers for whom Rebecca could not move fast enough with her flag. Oh boy. It almost doesn't even matter what you do. If you work with the public every day, you're going to have these stories. It's just,
Oh, yeah. I think especially people in customer service roles, because even if you just work in like a standard restaurant, you're going to have weird stories because people are weird.
this guy, Michael Donahoe. This is a long comment that I'm just trying to catch up and read right here live on the air, but he does like Uber driving and stuff. And says the weirdest moment was probably when we had to go to the only morgue in Las Vegas, New Mexico, located in a psychiatric hospital. I'm going to have to read this later because this is like such a long comment, but now I'm curious about why there's a morgue in an old psychiatric hospital and why he had to take a cab fare there.
Oh my gosh. Do you know the DJ in the club? I should have started with this guy. I know that we got to close out, so I'll just really quickly tell you this.
Oh, I
But
want to hear about the DJ. You go ahead.
oh, as his day job, he was an undertaker.
Right.
So he'd I might have actually got the job thing wrong, but he would have to go pick up bodies of people that
So
had died.
cold bodies during the day and warm bodies at night.
Yeah, that's what his biography should be called. He told me this story about when he couldn't get the work car and he was on call. So, like, if people suddenly died and they had to be picked up, and he had to take his own car. And he said that this guy was so tall and something about the nature of his death, but basically he had to drive for like an hour just with a body in the back of his car. And I was like, that is insane, because what if the police pulled you over or something? And he was like, well, that was my worry. He's like, it didn't occur to me. He's like, my job place were kind of taking the piss out of me a bit. I shouldn't have had to do it, but it didn't occur to me till I was trying to shove him in the boot. And I was like, oh, the way that he was taught, like, it's proper gallows humor, because I think if you work a job like that, you have to try and find things funny because it's very dark otherwise. But he was a ridiculous, like, in the best way possible, he was a ridiculous person that was just in a permanent practical joke war with one of the managers. And I watched him once have to climb out of his own trousers because the manager had super glued his chair during the shift. So, like, while he was working. And
on purpose, I take it.
Yeah, because
that doesn't just happen as an accident. I mean,
no, and it was in retaliation because the DJ had put super glue on the guy's mug or something, so he'd got his hand stuck and he had to go to the hospital to have it the mug removed. But they would leave it so long between doing things to each other that they never see it coming. So that was a fun aspect, because you just never know when it was going to strike, and you'd be entertained by something like that.
The longevity, like the planning ahead of that, is so interesting. Like, we got to let a certain amount of time elapse so that it's a surprise.
Yeah, so that they're surprised.
And there's people crawling out of their trousers in that strip club, whether it's against the regulations or not, apparently.
It was like, I wish that we had like 1,000 hours, because I just got so many different. Like, as I've talked, I'm like, oh, this happened and this happened I haven't even touched on this element of the place. Yes, I'd have you here all day. But it was a supremely weird place to work, and I'm glad I've worked there, because I feel like it's enriched my life in really weird ways.
It has, and that just goes to show, I mean, when you went in for that job interview, you were just trying to get a paycheck, and you would have never expected that that particular setting would enrich your life and that you'd come away with all this insight about, the lives of the dancers and the goings on of these people throwing their wives' money away and then getting busted for it. I mean,
oh yeah, and friends that are still close friends to this day as well, that I made there. Like, some of my longest running friends I met in these places. So yeah, that's been nice.
Wonderful. Well, I mean, I think we've had a great talk about it, and I think we even overcame the technology demon.
We did.
After he came in a couple times and rattled things up and we kept pressing on, we scared him away, and I think we ended up with a pretty solid episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. It's just been so much fun to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I've been wanting to do, is just get back to like real discussions, because, well, I'm heading into October here soon, so it's going to be all Halloween stories and all horror fiction. But I don't want my regular listeners, who are just the regular Joe, who maybe a regular guy who has his own strip club story, he might sit down and feel a little more connected listening to this episode. So I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing all that. That's been awesome.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been my pleasure.
All right. Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe we can have you on again sometime and show this technology demon that we're the bosses. You never know.
Yes, we'll overcome it again.
All right. Well, this has been Kayleigh Dobbs here as my special guest today on the Weird Wide Web podcast. And I hope you guys come back next time and check out episode 12. But for now, I will see you next time. You want to say bye, Kayleigh?
Yeah, my standard sign off for my goat related things is bleed. So I'm going to say bleed to everybody.